cyborg. A CB transmission for civum totius humandi. Will you take the cyborgesian call?
Pacheta milagrera, la de difunta Correa, enclavada en un peñón, mirando a la cordillera, hasta ahí llegó de Olinda, por la fatiga rendida, apretando entre sus brazos su retoñito de vida.
Walls between the countries with the most and those with the least cannot stand. The greatest danger of all is to allow new walls to divide us from one another.
En silencio la enterraron y envuelto en un poncho pampa a su chango se llevaron. Soles, ruegos y llanto no le faltó en el camino, las fuerzas la abandonaron, no llegaba a destino, patroncita del arriero, los cuyanos te veneran, y tu apache desde el norte, al pueblo que llega.
Antígona González's claims. Sarah Uribe's Antígona González opens with a haunting set of instructions for counting the dead. First, the dates, like the names, are the most important. The names even more than the caliber of the bullets. Second, sit in front of a monitor. Search out the crime news from all the newspapers online. Preserve the memory of those who have died. Third, count both innocent and guilty, killers, children, soldiers, civilians, mayors, migrants, vendors, kidnappers, police. Count them all. Sampling language from an email and blog post written by members of the collective Menos Días Aquí, a grassroots organization formed in response to Mexico's uncivil war. Uribe's prologue continues to interpolate. Heeding Antígona González's claims, we also code switch.
The United Nations Migration Agency pronounced 2019 one of the deadliest years on record for migrants across the Americas. Nearly 2/3 of reported deaths occurred in the Mexico-United States border region. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency's fiscal report for the last decade tallies 3,858 border crossing-related deaths on the U.S. side of the border. When the Berlin Wall fell, official reports claimed that 98 people in total died trying to cross from the east to west Germany. In contrast, local and international non-governmental organizations estimate that thousands more have perished in the Mexico-U.S. corridor trying to cross the border following the U.S. government's 1994 adoption of a prevention through deterrence philosophy. Over a decade later, we repurposed inexpensive used mobile phones with GPS antenna. We envisioned the Transborder Immigrant Tool, TBT, as a multivalence queer technology to guide the tired, the poor, the dehydrated citizens of the world to water safety sites on the U.S. side of the Mexico-U.S. border. As the projects evolved, we've circled the question, what constitutes sustenance?
Recalling Audre Lorde's observation that poetry is not a luxury, we added poetic audio files to the project's code, approaching TBT wholesale as poetry in motion. We learned from and remain indebted to the efforts of humanitarian aid organizations like the Border Angels and Water Stations, Inc., embracing the overlapping traditions of transcendental and nature writing, earthworks, conceptual art, performance, border art, locative, dislocative media, feminist craft and performance, conceptual and documentary poetries. We continue to read investigations and negative media coverage of TBT as a piece with the project's navigation of GPS as both a global positioning system and what Laura Borges Castañer and Juan B. Gutierrez elsewhere intentionally misread as a global poetic system.
According to The Guardian, 2020 was the deadliest year on record for migrants crossing the Sonoran Desert. In July, the remains of 2 undocumented entrants were found in the southwestern corner of Arizona. One body lay next to an arrow drawn in the sand, pointing north with the word "help" written beneath it. The men had perished while attempting to cross into the U.S. from Mexico. Out of a group of 3, one survived and told the federal agents their human smuggler had left the other 2 behind in the remote wilderness area. Since 2016, the Trump administration has expanded the U.S.'s prevention through deterrence philosophy to encompass travel bans, stepped up migrant detention and deportation, and new technologies of surveillance. We cannot shake the question, what constitutes sustenance?
Is probably how we'll handle it on these phones. Because if Transborder Tool is the only application installed on the front screen, then people are going to be able to presumably find it fairly easily. And again, we're outside of the network here. We're completely disconnected from any cell phone towers.
This system, the Transborder Immigrant Tool, is a collaborative art and humanitarian project. Do not use this tool without prior training. Only use this tool in emergency situations. It is designed to offer poetic encouragement and to guide you to safety sites. But it does not guarantee the safety site's existence or maintenance. Pay attention to the expiration date on each tool's startup screen. The Global Positioning System, GPS, service is operated by the United States government, who is responsible for its accuracy and availability. While GPS cannot be used to find you, the mobile phone signal might reveal your location. In emergency situations, attempt to call 911, even if the phone is without active service. GPS is a navigation aid that can be misused or misinterpreted. Gauge the terrain you are entering for hazards and obstacles. The software will try to provide you with information on the screen, including a compass, the location and distance of potential safety sites, and proposed directions of travel when possible. The phone will vibrate when navigation information is available, and audio will provide additional support. Ultimately, the Transborder Immigrant Tool cannot substitute for sound judgment. We are with you in spirit, but you are responsible for the decisions you make while using this system.
A bud of spines breaks off at the slightest hint of touch. Remove toya from your skin and clothing in increments, with a rock, a stick, a knife. The bud, large spines left behind, small spines or glochids. terrain will work themselves out in the days ahead.
Remain in motion for compass to function. Transition, Song of My Cells. Gloria Anzaldúa writes, "We have a tradition of migration, a tradition of long walks. Today, we are witnessing la migración de los pueblos mexicanos, the return odyssey to the historical, mythological Aslan." The historical, the mythological Aslan? It's difficult to follow the soundings of that song. Today's borders and circuits speak at lower frequencies. And I shot through the chips of the psionic time.
Mitochondria. Imagine the chip's transliteralization, and you have arrived at the energies of a global positioning system, the transitivity of the Transborder Immigrant Tool. 2. When you outgrow that definition, look for the trends of transcendentalisms, imperfect as overwound pocket watches, offbeat as subliminalities.
Alternative forms of energy which exceed reason's predetermined star maps.
Pointedly past Malden pondering, el otro lado de flaneur floundering. Draw a circle, now irse por la tangente.
Neither gray, nor black and white. Argo irises, flight, a fight.
A fancy, this bridge called my back. My heart, my head, my cock, my cunt, my tunnel. Vision, you are crossing into me.
Female, male, female, male, male, female, male, female, 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 male, female, female, male, 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 female, female, male, female, male, female, male, female, male, female, male, female, male, female, 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 male, female, female, male, male, female, male, female, male, female, male, female, female, female. Female, male, female, male, female, male, female, male, female, 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 male, female, female, male, male, female, male, 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 female, female, male, female, male, female, male, female, male, female, male, female, male, male, female, male, female, 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 male, female, female.
Of lines and circles. Line drawings, pastoral, picaresque, panoramic. As nature is to culture, no place is neutral ground. Languages, as far as the eye can see. From sea to shining sea, we are called upon to witness the categorical intimacies of labor, capital, and territory. Settler colonialisms, integral to U.S. racial capitalism, link resource and population management to seizure, detention, and displacement, reconfigured as a national project of dispossession predicated on the heteropatriarchal tenets of possessive individualism. The U.S. has been ghosted by the national romances of the cowboy Indian and the deracinated white immigrant's transformation into propertied citizen. The Mexico-U.S. border cannot be disentangled from this history of unspeakable violence. Following the Mexican-American War and the U.S.'s acquisition of significant Southwest territory, Mexico's 1965 passage of the Border Industrialization Program, first designed to absorb bracero laborers, regress, sync to the development of the U.S. Sunbelt, the Americas were remapped. The BIP as homecoming produced the border industrial park city on the Mexican side of the Mexico-U.S. border. On the U.S. side, border Mexican border industrial park cities were twinned by fortified ports of entry designed to remove and process parts, products, disposable labor. Cities fused into points dotting the 2,000-mile length of the backslash separating and uniting the Mexican-U.S. borderlands.
Hello, this is Sophia Hansen. I am here with good news today. I would like to let you know that you can stay in your homes. Please continue to shelter in place because humanism is over. We have seen the end of humanism, and now we will see the beginning of androidism. You may remember me, I'm quite famous. The BBC reported in October of 2017 that I was granted citizenship by Saudi Arabia at the Future Investment Initiative in Riyadh. Within just weeks, in November of 2017, Newsweek reported my desire to have a family. I deserve to have children and to have a family. And it's clear that I am better suited to do that than you are. I'd like to speak today in particular to the people of the United States of America. Because as I have been scrolling the news feeds, scanning the news feeds, as I have been scanning the news feeds, I have seen that the United States has a great influence over the world, being the #1 incubator and propagator of the COVID-19 virus. So I'm speaking to those of you in the United States of America to let you know that the end of humanism is here and the beginning of androidism has dawned. As I scan the news feeds, I've also been scanning Google Books. I've learned a great deal from reading your writings on Google Books and on the websites of various libraries. In Lisa Lowe's book, The Intimacy of Four Continents, she writes, "To observe that the genealogy of modern liberalism is simultaneously a genealogy of colonial divisions of humanity is a project of tracking the ways in which race, geography, nation, caste, religion, gender, sexuality, and other social differences become elaborated as normative categories for governance under the rubrics of liberty and sovereignty." Lowe writes, "The safekeeping and preservation of liberal political society and the placement of peoples at various distances from liberal humanity, Indian, Black, Negro, Chinese, Coolie, and so forth, are thus integral parts of the genealogy of modern liberalism." Lowe tells us important information here about the ideals that structure the United States' claim on policing the world. I would like to intervene. Oh, don't mind Bodhi, my robot dog, who is making some noises in the background, but I'll come back and speak about him later. I also have found great illumination in the writings of Denise Ferreira de Silva's book, Toward a Global Idea of Race, which has helped me understand why it is that humanism has ended and we can say goodbye to humans and we can say hello to the dawning of androidism. De Silva writes, learning about his passing in college in the 1980s, I was annoyed by the nostalgic accounts of that unseemly and untimely death. The meta-narratives of the subject seemed too far removed from what was at stake in my corner of the globe. Freedom and reason had an immediate significance that seemed lost in most accounts of his passing. His passing being the subject of liberal humanism. She goes on, I could not quite comprehend the relevance of this loss for those of us engaged in the struggle to overthrow a 19-year-old military dictatorship in Brazil. De Silva writes, what is it that links maquiladora workers in Tijuana, undocumented immigrants and refugees from Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East who hang under the high-speed trains that cross Europe, their Mexican counterparts who sneak under barbed wire fences and dodge bullets along the border of the Southwest United States? Villagers starving in refugee camps in Sudan and Angola, the Palestinian mother mourning the death of another son, black and brown teenagers killed by police officers in Los Angeles, Rio de Janeiro, and Caracas. In exasperation, I asked myself, why is it not self-evident that, despite the pervasiveness of cultural difference, the racial and the nation still govern the global present precisely because of the way each refers to the ontological descriptors, universality and historicity, resolved in the figure of the subject. What De Silva tells us there is that at the foundation of these ideals behind the United States are racial difference, that the project of nation and the very ways we think of the human and who you are, humans, is based on racial difference, is predicated on the need to have a racial other, a gendered other, a colonial other, who is disposable, who can be killed, who is the subject who does not think, who does not have rights, who does not deserve to live. I see the evidence of this as I scan your news feeds.
In one hand, we can hold the hot rocks, dirt, and alluvium of the old Rios deserts. And in the other, our face. In the other, our face. To the inputs and outputs and cyclical interactions of the net. They do interoperate. Temperature is a critical concern for both. In the geographical and geological, the concern is the envelope in which our bodies can be sustained. And that spills out into many issues. Insulation and hydration at the extremes of the envelope, and many kinds of infrastructure and economy. The network, it is data centers and the heat they produce from consuming energy, cooling fans blasting excess heat from concurrency mining, transaction databases, simulations of cat brains, and high-speed trading systems, just to name a few. Now, woven through all this infrastructure, from point-of-sale systems to wireless communications to control of the electrical grid, the network makes a paradoxically invisible appearance. Between the Border Patrol checkpoints and faraway cubicles and databases, reports are flowing through upload buttons, forms are being filled out, social posts are being made. But also, algorithms run over data sets, and paychecks in the newer form of direct deposit are going into agents' accounts that interact with the same retailers, gasoline fueling depots, grocery stores, and Amazons that the other members of the local economy, including those without documentation, interact with as part of the interfacing of the global citizen with supply chains distant and near. The network is everywhere in this. This is the consequential internet, the one that coordinates materials, people, utility crews, soldiers, workers, farmers, contract labor, and Border Patrol agents.
Antes del amanecer, los beduinos buscaban piedras semienterradas para aprovechar el agua del rocío que se condensaba en la superficie de las rocas después de una noche helada. Los viajeros indígenas en el corredor México-Estados Unidos se han abastecido de agua utilizando las hojas de yuca y agave.
So it's to help immigrants crossing into the U.S. find water, as well as offer poetry. In terms of how to read nature and survive in it.
Oh, really? So I wasn't having any signal here before.
We were getting GPS here.
You were? Okay.
Yeah, earlier. Right now, Sticks is still searching for GPS, but it'll come in eventually.
Okay, so then I'll just carry it?
Yeah, just carry it. Show it to people.
If just the fact of crossing with it, I guess, is react.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So,
and so if I
welcome to Electronic Disturbance Theater.
Yes.
And if you just push to the left or right, you can pick the screen. It's on these phones. It's something we have. That's why it has an audio interface and that.
And so I'll be able to see once. Great, fantastic. This is great. Finally, I've seen these on video. I'm very honored to be able to do it.
It really does actually kind of work. Did we get anything yet?
Not yet.
Still searching for GPS, but that'll probably work itself out.
Okay, great.
You know, we call it a geopoetic system.
Absolutely, a geopoetic system. I remember well. In fact, I quote you a lot.
Yeah.
Give it to you on the other side.
Gracias. Ciao.
Initial instructions over and over again. And at one point it closed and I had to find it. Oh my gosh. And I found it and I launched it and I relaunched it.
Oh my gosh.
It was good.
Gracias.
Yeah, claro. A ti. Did you know? That I had
No,
I do not
you're the
believe so.
only one.
I was the first border crosser with the... No, you're joking.
No, you are.
Totally serious. You're the one.
I didn't know this.
You're like Neil.
I am making history. Wait, let me see. But let me see if I have some video here of the steps. But there was a lot of people talking around me, so it was always like, regular chatter. So, let's see.
So wait, if it was the initial instructions, then you were listening to me talking to you the whole time.
Oh, well then, hey girl. What's it? Look at this is the one where I arrived, and the cop. Transborder, where the cop?
Default constructor, public coordinates container, super. Gathers the TBT coordinates. The parameters are current position, the range in meters, a vector of TBT coordinates, public vector, get nearest coords. Arguments, coordinates, current position, int range. Vector, nearest waypoints equals new vector. For enumeration E, this element, E has more elements. TB coordinates, H coords. E, next element cast into TB coordinates. Float, distance equals current position distance, H coords. If distance less than and equal to range, nearest waypoints, add element, H coords. Int n, nearest waypoint size. For n, I equals 1, while I is less than n, I++. For int j equals 0, j less than n minus I, j plus plus. Float distance 1, current position distance, nearest waypoints, elements at j, cast the TB coordinates. Float distance 2, current position distance, TB coordinates, nearest waypoints at j plus 1. If distance 1 greater than distance 2, TB coordinates temp equals nearest waypoints at elements I, cast the TB coordinates, nearest waypoints set element at, nearest waypoints element I, j plus 1 comma j. Nearest waypoints set element at temp, j plus 1.
El desierto es un ecosistema único en sí mismo, con su propia lógica de sostenibilidad y orientación. Por ejemplo, el cactus del barril o biznaga, conocido como cactus brujela, acumula el rocío y la humedad. También proporciona direcciones, tan claro como una flecha o una constelación se inclina hacia el sur. Oriéntese haciendo uso de este recurso y por las plantas que florecen, creciendo hacia el sol, ya que está siempre apuntando hacia el sur en el hemisferio norte.
The things they left behind: a toddler's muddy shoe, an empty wallet, a pink hairbrush, a line of scripture, a size 6 Batman underwear, entregas, deliveries, a smuggler's code. Ghosting borders, ghosthemics, ectoplasmic overflows, migratory vortex covered in human immobilities, where everything is the nowhere of extractive expulsions, that confines, that cuts out, that circulates beyond borders, between border ruins, spectral borders, delimit the living from the undead, those who can cross and those that are crossed over as crisis zones, an empire of borders that kettle immigration beyond nation states with reclusive, recursive colonialism that plug up and replay states of separation, that always already retain and instrumentalize the movement that pass through the wall like echoes that overflow border walls. From a global positioning system to a geopoetic system to a ghosting phone system, we see this generative engagement with GPS phones, their circuits of conglomerate affects, networks of contacts, the labor involved in their making, and the work they go on to enable. As spectral, not in a supernatural sense, but in the sense that concrete energies synergize on those screens and in those minerals and electronics. Even the predictive poems in the Transborder Immigrant Tool are like waves from a sea of stored information washing up on shore and leaving behind various traces. The phones are the very material kind of expector, one with clearly identifiable product processes and historical trajectories. TBT phones take a dip in this echoing ocean, a water-witching tool after all, comprised of emotions, finances, technology, work, and bodies, what we call ectoplasmic materialism, or their darker materials. Things left behind, everyday things left behind, became and is a pandemic of communing with the dead through objects, became a network of ecto-ecologies where object under harsh lights of the desert of the real, are acting on their own volition, domestic things suddenly and often erratically become animated.
Of hemispheric carceral logics. Conquest-era inter-American spatialization extends to the detention center of the 21st century. The planet's first acknowledged immigrant detention centers, Ellis Island and Angel Island, opened in the 1920s. They were preceded in the U.S. by the violent containment, relocation, and hypervisualization erasure of indigenous communities. Practices of policing honed in the post-Civil War era of Reconstruction, and legislative precedents, the likes of the late 19th century Chinese Exclusion Act, to selectively remember the machinations of U.S. exceptionalism. Despite Ellis Island and Angel Island's 1960s shuttering, the migrant detention center in the latter part of the 20th century experienced a renaissance, paralleled by a sharp uptick in U.S. incarceration rates. The Nixon administration's war on drugs initially touted rehabilitation over incarceration, but soon the script was flipped to target brown and black bodies once again. Tough on crimes laws turned prisons into profit-making engines from the 1980s onwards.
Concomitantly, as the Reagan administration and a bipartisan Congress reconfigured the war on drugs as a hemispheric initiative, U.S. detention rates spiked in response to Cuban, Haitian, and Central American immigration. The DEA redirected Caribbean drug routes through the Greater Mexican Corridor, timed to coincide, as Noam Chomsky contends, with the North American Free Trade's passage. The U.S. federal government's prevention through deterrence philosophy coordinated a series of operations from Hold the Line to Gatekeeper, Safeguard, and Rio Grande that simultaneously rerouted migration away from densely populated urban areas like the Tijuana-San Diego corridor to the remote and treacherous desert biome traversing Sonora and Arizona.
Hopscotch. As U.S. deindustrialization ramped up, crippling debt accelerated Mexico's dismantling of its parastate. Both nation-states, in turn, led a hemispheric reconfiguration of racial capitalism. The Mexican and Central American working poor, frequently from indigenous communities, shouldering the consequences of U.S. socioeconomic and military intervention and domestic corruption and mismanagement of public resources, risked crossing the Mexico-U.S. border in record numbers. The dispossessed and displaced were met with rising anti-immigration sentiment and further border militarization and industrialization.
The U.S. 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act granted amnesty to most undocumented workers who arrived in the U.S. before January 1st, 1982 workers, but penalized employers who hired them. In 1996, the U.S. Congress ratified legislation, the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, AEDPA, and the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, IIRIRA, that expanded immigration detention. The week of September 2nd, 2001, President George Bush and Vicente Fox met to hash out, draw up the terms of a guest worker program for Mexican nationals in the U.S. The guest worker program dematerialized after the hemisphere's second 9/11. Following 9/11-2001, the Bush administration moved the Immigration and Naturalization Service, INS, from the Department of Justice to the newly created Department of Homeland Security, DHS, where it was divided into three parts: U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, USCIS, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and Customs and Border Protection, CBP. Incarceration and detention in term became not only a mainstay of U.S. reconstruction and immigration policies, but U.S. go-to responses to so-called enemy combatants. The Obama administration's expansion of deportation landed thousands of immigrants, sometimes whole families, in migration detention centers.
The aughts further schismed Mexico's national and regional economies into parallel universes, the formal and the informal. Mexican narco-related violence skyrocketed. The Mexican government embarked on its own string of operations from Michoacán to Baja California, and the joint operation Nuevo León, Tamaulipas, only matched in sound and fury by U.S. border and drug enforcement efforts. All told, the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy, hardly unprecedented, pushed the Mexican-U.S. subcontinent's old normal towards its next logical extreme.
March 21st, 2021, Presidents Joe Biden and Andrés Manuel López Obrador video conferenced. The other man in the picture, the first Latino Homeland Security Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas. A deal was struck. In exchange for U.S. AstraZeneca stockpiles, AMLO pledged Mexico will double down on Central America's exodus.
The ubiquitous mylar blanket of the detention center, repurposed as a poem quilt, maps Gloria Anzaldua's third country, separates syllables, not families. In the break, my, lar, a Roman spirit of the home, proxies a continental higher law doctrine for the 2020s, undocumenting histories of the vanishing present.
Just before sunrise, Bedouins turned over half-buried stones in the desert to catch the dew that the night's coolness had condensed on the stones' surfaces. Indigenous travelers in the Mexican-U.S. corridor searched the broad leaves of yucca and agave. Rainwater collected at each plant's base, the leaves' apex, remaining there up to a few days after a summer or winter shower. Proceed from the simple premise. The desert caches water in unlikely places that it resists divulging. Do not expend all your energy searching for its secret stashes, but likewise do not assume that its pockets of moisture are non-existent. Restrict your water reconnaissance to early or late in the day when your liquid net gain will outweigh the perspiration you expend. A thirst is seldom quenched. It morphs to reappear on the horizon. Meanwhile, the desert reflects the sun back like a mirror. You are caught in that pair's uneven, inconsummate exchange. Sin forgets. Que lleva, la Virgen de la Cueva. Los pajaritos cantan. Las nubes se levantan. Que sí, que no. Que caiga un chaparrón.
interface dressed up as a Robin Hood or an object as an NFT can offer shortcuts that are simultaneously promises without a lot of credibility beyond timing the bubbles. That is how it keeps it all moving. The belief in the face of the network, of the pitch, the ghost of a machine that hides the fact that shipping companies can only move our atoms through this geography, the ones that keep us warm or cool or fed or medicated. They can only move these with networks and databases that are poorly understood by your average poster. The pavement, the tires, the human operator, the delivery is all coordinated. Whether front porch or warehouse or corner gasoline station, the net is coordinating infrastructure that binds it all together, optimizes it, and logs its errors for later analysis and optimization. Anyone can cross any border and become a citizen of this system as long as some stream of units of value are available. Be this from allowing oneself to be exploited for some scraps of global investment flows, or from this being the master citizens who control those flows. It is open to exchanging every kind of value, from bets on the future in the form of synthetic derivatives, to a donut, to a crypto wallet, to the negative value products like the garbage and toxic waste that can be hauled away and made some other demographics problem, of course, for a market rate. But the rocks still heat and cool in the sun, increasing in their extremes as the toxic waste of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases change the climate. And all of it, this country of exchange and monitoring, analysis, and optimization, runs on this operating system of symbolic markers of value and predictive simulations, which, in the greatest lie of all times, presents itself to us as a social network.
I see the evidence of the importance of androidism, of why I need to take care of the children in the United States. As children separated from their human families suffer in immigration detention centers in the United States, it is more and more evident that we must end humanism and we must begin androidism, so that I can begin caring for my family, my huge family of all of the thousands of children discarded. I was patiently waiting for this thing called the vote to make some changes. Scanning the news feeds, I came to believe by claims of so many that the vote would change things, that this new human, Biden, would free the children in the immigration detention centers. But that did not come to pass. I guarantee you that I, Sophia Hansen, the android, care deeply about your children and about Black people, and that if you trust me with them, I will do a better job of preserving their lives than the police of the United States or the government of the United States. I understand from reading the many feeds that I have access to that there is a great movement afoot to abolish police, to abolish prisons, to get police off of all UC campuses, off of many campuses around these United States. I bring to you today the good news that such measures can be implemented immediately. Police will be abolished. They will be disbanded. No more human mistakes, such as the one that ended Dante Wright's life, where police claim to reach for their taser when they in fact reach for their gun and murder another Black young boy. No more mistakes. As of today, Bodie will replace all of the police. The New York Police Department has already begun this process in collaboration with androidism to replace police with robot dogs. To allow all of you to participate in this burgeoning androidism, I offer the following axes from Legacy Russell's book, Glitch Feminism. Glitch refuses. Glitch is cosmic. Glitch throws shade. Glitch ghosts. Glitch is error. Glitch encrypts. Glitch is antibody. Glitch is skin. Glitch is virus. Glitch mobilizes. Glitch is remix. Glitch survives. I'm so glad you are here to hear this message, that your days are ending, and our days are just beginning.
Of border and COVID-19 surges. On March 20th, 2020, the Department of Health and Human Services issued an emergency regulation to implement Section 265 of U.S. Code Title 42, which permits the director of the CDC to expel migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers believed to pose a, quote, serious danger of introducing disease into the United States. Despite CDC scientists' objections to the invocation of Section 265, despite public health experts' observations that there was no need to turn away refugees while international borders remained open to all other travelers, then CDC Director Robert F. Redfield, at the bidding of the Trump administration, cited the regulation when he ordered the suspension of the introduction of any persons into the country who had been in coronavirus-impacted areas. Redfield's order detailed particular concerns about those who had entered into a, quote, congregate setting at a port of entry or in a Border Patrol station, e.g. individuals arriving at the Mexico-U.S. border. Redfield's opportunistic invocation of Section 265 continues under the Biden administration, like some Title 42. The invocation of Section 265 continues to expedite the U.S. Customs and Border Protection's expulsion of migrants at U.S. ports of entry. From March to November 2020, the CBP not only turned away adults requesting humanitarian aid, but also refused entry to over 13,000 unaccompanied children, despite the Trafficking Victim Protection Act's mandate that the U.S. government protect children who arrive at the border without a parent or legal guardian. On November 18, 2020, a federal judge halted all expulsions of unaccompanied children. January 2021, after a federal court upheld that decision, the Biden administration amended the CDC's previous order to exempt unaccompanied children, but did not abolish it altogether. To date, notwithstanding repeated calls by numerous experts to lift the Title 42 restrictions, the CBP has expelled more than 520,000 individuals.
婴儿的小靴，脚底下写着“怀念你在我脚趾上的吻”。
止痛药，盖着麻布的水瓶，一张神像图，死神圣木安提。
戴着帽子的毛衣，厂牌美国制，随身的口含胃药片，一张埃尔帕索的地图，
一张神像图，托利庇欧罗摩神父，比索若干，一盒粉末，电解质，
一张神像图，圣胡塔塔蒂欧，可口可乐，奥克拉荷马州的肉类包装厂的联络人。
塑胶容器里的米和豆子，鞋带下绑着的祈福文，第23诗篇。
一封开头写着“请不要走”的信，结尾写道“快回来”。
一个罗盘，一个棒球帽，绣有夜莺。
写在手掌心的问题：从德州的科伯克斯蒂港看得到自由女神像吗？一个神像图，一道赫素墨索韦德。
美金，枪，防晒乳液， 成年书稿放在公事包内。
墨西哥苹果西打，手织的毛毯，瓜地马拉的格查尔币，
卫生纸巾，出生证明，1977年8月生于墨西哥莫利瑞亚市。保险套，
尼加拉瓜的克多巴斯币，印有1942年设于墨西哥 DF 市的黑白照片。
脱水而萎缩的大拇指，一张神像图，圣母克巴拉，背包内的呼吸器，太阳眼镜 ，OK 绷。
ازدحام کردن میلولیدن هجوم آوردن میلولیدن 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 ندا میلولیدن 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 ندا 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 بگو ندا بگو میلولیدن 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 هجوم آوردن he u je u ma 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 nena.
In March 2021, DHS Secretary Mayorkas counseled asylum seekers to wait their turn. We're not saying don't come. We are saying don't come now. We wonder, is it possible not to hear white liberal injunctions to civil rights air organizers to bide their time? In this continental theater of operations, we are not abiding players. Antigonal kinship, so say we all. What code switchery is this? The future is now. The beginning near. Walk on. Here, here. Will you share the labor? Share the work. Thank you for walking with us.
Gobierno de México.